Section 4. You will hear part of a student presentation about a conservation project on the Florida coast of the United States.
Today I'm going to be talking about the first year of a regeneration project in a mangrove forest. Mangrove forests are found along river estuaries and coastlines and are important because they prevent flooding by acting as a barrier between the land and sea. The mangrove trees have special roots which can breathe and allow them to survive in thick, airless mud. They are also a very important habitat for wading birds, fish, and other animals. In the area where the project is taking place, there have been a number of problems since the area was first settled over 100 years ago. Many of the mangrove trees were initially burnt as firewood by local farmers. The mangrove forests were also poisoned by settlers' farming methods because the farmers used fertilizer to increase crop yields, and this started to seep into the water, eventually killing part of the mangrove forest. Farming in the area wasn't successful, and what was left of the mangrove forest area wasn't valued by local people as crops couldn't be grown there. And so what happened was that the area started to be used as somewhere to dump trash. Action was urgently needed to protect the mangrove forest and prevent flooding, and so the Mangrove Regeneration Project was set up. The conservationists involved decided to construct a sand barrier around the forests. But unfortunately, this proved to be ineffective. The only way forward appeared to be to grow new mangroves from seed. Several species of mangrove inhabit the forests in this area of the United States, but it is the gray mangroves that we are concerned with here. The seed of this plant is about the size of an almond, and most seeds fall only when they are fully ripe. The Mangrove Regeneration Project first began 3 years ago. The first set of seedlings was planted in small pots and left to germinate in a hothouse. The plants thrived, and large roots appeared at the bottom of the pots. Ideally, these seedlings should have been conditioned with increasingly salty water before being planted in the sea. They had, in fact, only been watered with rainwater. As the plants weren't used to a saline environment, it was decided to plant them out on the south side of a small island nearby. It was hoped that this would allow them to get used to salt water gradually, since this part of the island was flooded every day at high tide. There were over 100 plants planted in this particular spot, and it was necessary to protect them not from the large number of wading birds which visit the area looking for food, but from the large rabbit colony living in the area. The process for the second set of seedlings was completely different. Young seedlings were collected from the forests and then taken to a new site. The seedlings were then planted in the seabed behind old mangrove roots for protection. However, this method did not prove very successful, and the vast majority of these seedlings were washed away in a storm. Luckily, the first set of seedlings survived, and this method is the one which the project will continue to use in the future. Now, I'd like to describe in more detail the process.
Section 4. You will hear a tutor talking to a group of students about a project to build a driverless vehicle.
Hello everyone. I have an exciting announcement to make. The university has decided to enter an international competition next year, and we are going to need some enthusiastic undergraduates to help us with the project. The competition is to make an automated vehicle, a kind of robot that will be able to move quickly and accurately on its own. All the vehicles will then enter a race which will take place here in the U.S. So the engineering school will be collaborating with the computer science department and possibly the automotive design department, although that's yet to be confirmed. What they have to do is try to design an automated vehicle which will be able to complete the course. To give you an idea of how tough this race is, one vehicle last year only managed 12 kilometers of the 280-kilometer stretch of California desert that forms the racetrack. The vehicles in the race must cover the whole distance without a human driver and, quite autonomously, identify and steer around corners and avoid unexpected hazards, things like rocks, for example. It's a challenging task because there are lots of obstacles of this kind along the route. As I said, in last year's event, the most successful vehicle only drove 12 kilometers. Then its team decided to deactivate it because it had gotten too near a cliff. In the race held earlier this year, there still wasn't a winner, but they did much better, and there was one design which we will be analyzing carefully in seminars. Its strength was in its onboard technology. That particular vehicle built a three-dimensional picture of its surroundings using video cameras and lasers. It was equipped with 7 laptop computers, which analyzed the incoming information 10 times a second. And it drove along at a comfortable 55 kilometers per hour. The design details have been published, so we hope to learn from them and go on to make ours even better for next year's competition. The competition is open to all universities, and there's a prize of $2 million for the winner. But it's really about more than that. The sponsors are hoping to see innovative design ideas that they can transfer into commercial production. You'll get a lot out of this project as well, in terms of working as a team and broadening your knowledge of the subject. The key to winning is unlikely to be anything to do with what the vehicle looks like. Programming skills will decide who eventually wins first prize. The design will need technological expertise in this area above all, and that's what the team who work on the project will need to focus on. I'll be handing out some scientific reports about this year's vehicle shortly. It's interesting to read that even after months and months of planning, building, and trials, many of the teams were amazed that the vehicles did what they wanted them to do at all, because so many things can go wrong on the day. So even though no vehicle actually completed the course, they were pleased they got as far as they did. Right. If any of you are interested, this is the plan of action. Keep an eye on the main notice board for details. Firstly, at the beginning of May, we'll be scheduling a seminar to introduce the project to anyone who might be interested. Later in the month, we'll be asking you to submit a short essay, letting us know why you feel you should be chosen to take part in the project. You'll need to tell us about any particular skills that you have and can bring to the team, and any experience you may have had in the field. Then, in June, we're organizing a trip to a factory to chat over some design considerations with specialists there who have kindly agreed to act as consultants throughout the project. Then, at the beginning of the next semester in September, we thought we'd hold a weekend workshop to share ideas and see computer-aided design demonstrations. We have a brand new package which sponsors have kindly financed. You'll need to be able to use it with confidence before we start. In December, we'll be asking you to submit your outline designs, and the following month, we'll choose the team and start work in earnest. Okay, It sounds like a lot of fun, but it will also require serious commitment. So please think this through carefully. Some handouts are coming around now. Any questions?
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture on the ways that supermarkets use layout to increase sales.
We've been looking at marketing techniques which influence buying decisions. Some of these techniques are related to the way the products are presented in the store. For supermarkets, the store layout is not as random as it seems. Decisions have to be made about the arrangement of the aisles where the customers walk, and the shelves and so on where the products are displayed. The most common layout pattern is the grid layout, where parallel aisles are arranged in a rectangular pattern. Supermarkets like this layout as it allows them to utilise floor space efficiently by providing the greatest amount of display space proportionate to aisle space. Also, this layout helps to manage traffic flow as it encourages people to all walk in one direction. The main weaknesses of the grid layout are the monotony of rows of aisles and the fact that it is easier for customers to rush through the supermarket without lingering. Another layout pattern used by supermarkets is known as the free-form. Here, displays and aisles are arranged in a random pattern. The good thing about this layout is that customers tend to spend more time in the store as they wander about looking for different products. Its main weakness is the inefficient use of space, which means it is less cost-effective. Then we have the boutique layout, where everything is organised around a food specialty, such as the bakery. The advantage of this layout is that it divides parts of the store into smaller areas, which may be distinguished by changes in flooring or displays. A further advantage is that this style of layout is attractive to shoppers. Space, however, is not used economically, and it is therefore expensive. The choice of location of particular types of items in the store is also important. A supermarket's design aims to direct customers to the store's side and rear walls. Items typically displayed along the rear length of the store include meat and dairy products, since these appear on the grocery list of the majority of shoppers. This means shoppers must pass by a large number of other items to get to them. Items which consumers tend to spend more time considering before buying, such as cosmetics, are usually placed away from the busy areas so that people can look at them in comfort without feeling rushed. Products placed at the end of aisles are clearly visible, and therefore these locations provide a greater opportunity for shoppers to view the products. Consumers tend to assume that items on display at the end of an aisle are on sale, but this is often not the case. In fact, supermarket managers often place products which are not selling quickly enough in these positions. The placement of products on shelves is very carefully planned. Supermarket executives use computer-generated plans to help them place products on shelves in a way that ensures consumers spend more. The eye level of the average woman is 1 metre 60 centimetres off the floor, which is the height of the middle shelves, so the things which cost more are placed here, while cheaper products are placed on higher or lower shelves. Only items targeted at children break this rule. They are placed on the lowest shelves. Supermarkets also use a range of other marketing techniques to encourage consumers to spend more. It's no accident that in nearly every supermarket, the fruit and vegetable department is the first shoppers come to as they enter the store. These, together with flowers, produce a greater profit than any other department. After complaints from parents, many supermarkets no longer place popular products aimed at children on the shelves next to the checkout. Instead, you are most likely to find products aimed at impulse buyers, such as chocolate, magazines and other treats here. Many supermarkets have also expanded into non-food areas such as clothing, entertainment and stationery. These products often find...
Section 4. You will hear part of a linguistics lecture about a language called Bislama that is spoken in the Pacific Islands.
Good morning and welcome back to this series of linguistics lectures. Today I will be talking about the language Bislama, which is a form of Pidgin English. Linguists use the term pidgin to describe new languages that are created by combining two or more existing languages, often in a simplified form. The study of pidgin languages is important because it provides us with information about language change and modification. The pidgin English known as Bislama is used in the South Pacific nation of Vanuatu, a group of islands where 81 first languages are still regularly used by the local people. There are a further 17 local languages that are in danger of dying out and 8 that have been identified as extinct. This gives a total of 106 first languages in all, a very high number for a small country with a population of just 200,000 people. Then thinking about foreign languages, English is the most important and has official status, largely because it is the medium for all education purposes. However, it is Bislama that is the most widely spoken language in the country, used regularly by more than 90% of the population. We should note here that in earlier times some people had negative feelings towards the language. In fact, for many years it was commonly referred to as a broken language and its use was discouraged. But attitudes have changed dramatically, and today the people of Vanuatu are very proud of this unique language. It is only when we understand the historical context that we can comprehend just why Bislama developed in Vanuatu. The first form of Pidgin English in this region can be traced to around 1800, when foreign traders arrived and local people were recruited to work as sailors. On board multilingual ships, there was an obvious need for a common tongue, and Pidgin English was born. This early form of Bislama continued to spread as trade in the Pacific developed in sandalwood and other local commodities. Then from about 1860, a lot of people from Vanuatu travelled to Australia to work on the new plantations as labourers. Again, because of the multilingual nature of these workplaces, it was very important to have a common language. Finally, in modern times, there have been other pressures that have maintained the need for a common language. Like many other parts of the world from about the 1950s, Vanuatu experienced a significant migration of its people from small villages into the city, and it has been here that Bislama has really established itself as the country's first language. So then, how can we describe the language itself? In general terms, Pidgin languages can be defined as extremely simple versions of the original language. However, this is not a satisfactory definition in this case, and linguists prefer to describe Bislama as a developed Pidgin, because it has more rules and ideas than most simple Pidgin languages found in other parts of the world. Let's think first about the vocabulary. Because Britain was the colonial power, the majority of Bislama's vocabulary is derived from English. However, some care needs to be taken here. For example, the word from in Bislama can also mean because of, so we need to be aware that words can have a wider range of meanings in Bislama. Indeed, there are numerous other potentially misleading terms, and English is not the only contributor to the vocabulary. Again, because of the region's history, there are some words, around 5 to 10%, that are derived from French. Then, a relatively small number of words have been taken from local Pacific languages. Usually this is the case where there is no English equivalent for naturally occurring phenomena or to describe some aspect of the culture that is unique to the country. Finally, a word about grammar. Although the vocabulary is based largely on English, it's important to note that the grammatical structure of Bislama is derived from patterns common in the local languages of Vanuatu. So, for example, there are two distinct pronouns meaning we. One means I and you, and another means I and some others, but not you. Sounds confusing in English, but in the local languages, such distinctions are common. A different example concerns the word long. It is almost the only preposition in Bislama and may be used in place of a whole range of English words such as at, to, with, on, in, and so on. Well, that is the end of the formal part of the lecture. If you have any questions now, I'll be most happy to answer.
Part 4. You will hear part of a talk about recent research into the design of workplaces.
Hello everyone. I recently completed some important research into the way office space is designed and its impact on employees. The open plan office had been the norm for offices around the world. I'm sure you can picture one. A big room with maybe 50 or 100 workers sitting at their workstations. You might think open plan designs are a recent phenomenon, but they actually came about in the early 20th century when businesses needed large numbers of people to do typing. These employees, usually women, used to have to sit in rows working away at their typewriters under the watchful eye of their supervisor. Over the years, designers have come up with several variations on the open theme. In particular, this has been achieved through furnishings. The early designs featured separate desks. A subsequent design introduced the concept of the cubicle. These can have either high screens that workers can't see over, or a screen just low enough to keep a lookout for the manager. And nowadays, with the increase in large call centres, a phenomenon known as hot desking is common. In this system, employees working on different shifts are asked to share the same workstation. As you can imagine, this is not very popular with staff as there is little opportunity to personalise your workspace. In fact, my research shows that employees in general dislike the open plan design. As a part of my research, I conducted a survey of the staff in several large companies with open plan offices. The employees all voiced similar concerns about the design. Firstly, they felt that the open plan took away their privacy, but many also felt the need to carry their valuables with them at all times. So, to some extent, they also felt there was less security with these designs. Another common complaint may be something for employers to consider when choosing this type of design, and this was that these types of office space are bad for the health. I was intrigued by this possibility, but looking at staff records, it does seem to be borne out. So, if this design is so unpopular, why is it so commonplace? Well, the answer to that is in the benefits that the employers feel this type of design has. Of course, there is the obvious benefit that this design significantly reduces costs, both in terms of rent and even in terms of energy use. Employers also argue that an open plan design leads to better teamwork and communication. They also feel that new staff can learn from observing other workers, so this design can actually help in training staff. However, the complaints voiced by employees seem to suggest that the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages. The reality is that unhappy workers are unlikely to work well together, and there is plenty of evidence to suggest workers are frequently distracted from their work by the noise that is all around them. What is clear is that as designers, we need to think carefully about the impact that our design has both on the staff involved and the work that they do.
Part 4. You will hear part of a lecture on nanotechnology and its applications.
Today's lecture is the first of a series of lectures on nanotechnology. Nanotechnology, sometimes shortened to nanotech, refers to the manipulation of matter on an atomic and molecular level. It's a science, engineering and technology conducted at the nanoscale, which is about 1 to 100 nanometers. It is the study and application of extremely small things and can be used across all the other science fields. Just how small is that? A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. The idea of nanoscale research first started from a physicist called Richard Feynman in 1959. He envisaged a process in which scientists would be able to manipulate and control individual atoms and molecules. In fact, it wasn't until 1981, with the invention of a special kind of microscope, that modern nanotechnology truly began. Even though nanotechnology has created many new materials and devices with a vast range of applications, there is always concern over these unnatural products. Many people are worried that they may pose a threat to the environment, health and safety, also known as EHS. In order to better understand and evaluate the potential harm, risk assessment has been introduced. There are also ongoing international collaborations on nano-EHS research and related policy issues. Despite the concern, nanotechnology has benefited society in unexpected ways. In the food processing industry, nanotechnology is leveraged against iron deficiency, which triggers anemia. For example, by reducing the particle size in potatoes, this new technology improves the bioavailability of this nutritional ingredient without the tendency to cause colour and odour changes. In terms of packaging, nanomaterials are more economical and are used in all sorts of products, chocolate in particular. Nanotechnology can also enhance the flavour of food. On a domestic scale, we expect more smart furniture, which is made of shape memory alloys, to be manufactured. But nanotechnology has much wider application than this and could also help develop sustainable agriculture. It offers great potential to strengthen the effect of fertilizers, thereby minimizing the environmental impact and boosting the productivity of plants in the soil. In the area of medicine, bioengineers have developed simple and inexpensive nanoscale delivery vehicles. Conductors like carbon nanotubes have been invented with varying structures. Such nanotubes have become increasingly attractive to researchers because of their ability to efficiently deliver drugs into veins. This means that higher doses of drugs loaded on them can be transported from the administration sites to the effects-related sites, such as cancer focuses, thus decreasing toxic side effects while increasing the treatment effects. The research team has also developed a widely accepted material that can be used to coat different surfaces, including wood, plastic and glass. It is mainly comprised of silver. Such nanoparticles can eventually kill some microbes due to the antiseptic properties. The whole process is simple, easy to apply, and more importantly, harmless to the environment. Surprisingly, nanotechnology has major implications for our health as well. By changing the metabolic rate through a particular type of protein, obese patients are able to burn calories faster, even under a high-calorie diet. Therefore, treatment programs are provided for patients to lose weight by disposing of excess fat in a relatively safer manner. The finding may help explain why overweight people struggle to lose weight. Their stored fat is actively fighting against their efforts to burn it off at the molecular level. Further research is mainly focused on the clinical and commercial developments of therapies for obesity, diabetes, and other associated conditions such as heart disease. In terms of cosmetics, the applications of nanotechnology and nanomaterials can be found in many products. There are two main uses for nanotechnology in cosmetics. The first one is that nanoparticles are commonly used as UV filters in anti-aging sun care products to avoid skin damage caused by the sun. In addition, nanotechnology has played an important role in delivering active ingredients to the skin. The mechanism proves to improve the bioavailability of actives and enhance skin hydration. The wide variety of nanotechnology applications leave no doubt that this field will only continue to get more exciting, and I look forward to seeing these developments further branch out.
4. You will hear part of a lecture on bird research in Australia.
Good afternoon. This is the third session of the series of lectures on wildlife. For this lecture, we're going to look at two studies on the habitats of birds and protection measures taken in Australia, including the basic methodology and related areas of research. Now, let me give you some background information about the first research project on birds. The study was carried out by R.B. Cunningham and his team from the Australian National University in 1995. The primary goal was to detect the breeding habits and resting sites of some birds, especially those protected species in urban regions. These species included birds like peregrine falcons and kestrels in Australia. The bird data set consisted of a total of 153 species recorded from 946 sites. One might expect that in order to obtain valid data on their distribution patterns and population densities, researchers had to count through binoculars. Instead, they managed to estimate with various standard distance sampling methods like random sampling. In addition, a mapping system was used to study their companionship behaviour. It recorded proposed birds' nesting sites to monitor the mating behaviour of targeted species. To obtain valid data of birds' whereabouts, researchers attached identity tags to birds' legs transmitting radio signals. The tagging process was done when the birds were between 5 and 7 days of age. After the initial tagging, data was collected from subsets of radio-tagged birds, making it possible to assess the trends of birds over 15 months. So, what did they find? Well, as it turned out, many of the birds tagged had the tendency to nest in the same habitat where they grew up. Their nesting sites were quite varied and included freshwater reed beds, tidal reed beds, agricultural crops, and man-made sites. Even though naturally occurring nests were common, birds sometimes accidentally nested in man-made devices like power towers, chimneys, and tunnels. This research also studied the impact of humans on bird communities and found out that pollution had contributed greatly to the declining birth rates of some species, which were considered to be extinct or threatened to vanish from the study area. These species are dependent on natural forests because of their breeding holes. They will become extinct when local natural forests continue to be polluted heavily. A number of measures were thus taken by members from local animal conservation organisations to boost their alarming survival rates. Firstly, breeding boxes were placed in trees, taking on the role of breeding holes that were contaminated. Protection guidelines were also introduced strictly prohibiting killing, disturbance and habitat destruction. A further measure was taken to ensure the safety of birds from wind farms. In fact, birds are sometimes shedded by wind turbine blades. A great deal of work was done on how to prevent them from colliding with turbines. A case in point was protecting space for bird migration by ensuring that migratory routes were kept free. Falcons generally cope well with wind turbines, but not in weather conditions where visibility is bad. So, with knowledge of how fast falcons fly, bird stations in northern Australia can notify wind farms further south of the falcon's approach so that turbines can be shut down as they pass by. Then, another piece of research was done a couple of years later by Conway in 2006. His team detected the calling frequency of seabirds flying at night. Acoustic signals are important communication tools for birds. These signals can indicate social cohesion, prey location, and breeding behaviour. Courtship songs are common among various species during mating seasons. Males produce calling songs that attract distant females, and then courtship songs will induce nearby females to respond. Surveyors also took recordings of the sounds of all the individual birds detected. A tablet PC was used to process detailed information like sound pitch, spectrum, length and timing of surveys. To minimise the disturbance on the bird community, all the sounds were recorded from a distance using microphones to detect noise. They found that the probability of call events was much higher for solitary birds communicating early and late in the day. Further analyses indicated that during foraging, the frequency of calls was significantly greater for birds encountering schooling fish, and birds called sooner after a catch in these foraging scenarios, compared with when only single fish were encountered. The results of this study showed that increased calling activity in the presence of more profitable prey could be of crucial importance to seabirds that benefit from group foraging. So, does anyone have more questions on...
Four. You will hear part of a lecture on organic farming.
Hi everyone, what I'm going to talk about today is organic farming. Let's first look at what organic farming is. It can be defined as one or more systems of production which don't use synthetic fertilizers, man-made pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics or livestock feed additives to grow crops and raise animals. Virtually all organic farmers prefer to use renewable resources and recycling to give what conventional farmers might consider waste back to the soil of Mother Nature. From this, we can see organic farming is a sustainable production system, which is one of its advantages. Organic farmers use numerous techniques to promote the quality of life of plants and animals within existing ecosystems and minimize pollution that occurs with all conventional farming practices. Another benefit is that, with the increasing consumer demand for a healthier, more nutritionally balanced product, the sales of organically produced food are promoted. According to the research, it has become the fastest growing sector of agriculture and has shown an annual increase of at least 20% during the last 6 years. What's more, both chemical fertilizers and synthetic pesticides consume non-renewable resources such as oil and coal. But the development of organic farming can lower the demand for these fertilizers and pesticides, so it is conducive to the conservation of essential energy. At the same time, it also can reduce industrial pollution caused by the production of these chemical substances. Organic farming differs greatly from the traditional one in a number of ways. Let's discuss it from the perspective of agricultural biodiversity, firstly. For instance, earthworms are an important indicator of soil fertility. Studies have shown that the density and species number of earthworms in organically managed soils are 3 times as high as those in conventional fields. Moreover, the biodiversity in organic farming can also be reflected in the number of insects, which is twice as many as those in traditional farms. This might be highly related to the fact that organic vegetables are grown without any human-made pesticides, making these vegetables more likely to be damaged. The other main difference between organic and traditional farming lies in crop yields, one of the biggest concerns of organic farmers. Organic farms, though possibly well adapted for certain local environments, produce less food per unit of land. For example, organic vegetables like tomatoes and potatoes yielded are 40% less than conventional ones. In addition, research has also found the number of weeds produced in winter is about 90% at present, which has decreased by 10% than before. However, lower crop yields in organic farming are still inevitable at the moment. Anyway, organic farming is a new direction for agricultural development. These days, a variety of organic products are cultivated not only for humans but also for animals. For example, organic grass. It is commonly used in organic farms to feed cows. Because of the non-use of synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, it can protect cows from diseases brought by large-scale breeding, thus ensuring the quality of raw milk. But an interesting phenomenon is that its production has remained constant these years, which is quite unique compared with other types of crops. Research on organic farming has covered various aspects and involved many countries. According to one study, organic farming was proposed in India in the early 1960s, when it was faced with acute shortages of food grains due to the ever-increasing population and natural disasters. Although it could not be applied successfully at first, As farmers had been familiar with conventional instructions, proponents of organic farming claimed that organic agriculture emphasized biodiversity and effective soil management could enhance the capacity to mitigate and even reverse the effects of climate change. So, India needed organic farming along with modern scientific agriculture. The study shows that in 2016, India became the country with the largest number of organic products, and the production of crops kept growing year on year. Another international review about organic farming presents in the first part that people today have become increasingly interested in organic food, and this opinion is quite the same as that of other articles. But what impressed me most was the volume of the investigation the author did in different countries. He conducted a survey in 99 countries, of which 66 are convinced that organic farming is beneficial to animals, while 8 hold the opposite opinion, and the remaining 25 say it is inconclusive. Therefore, the last part of the review is mainly talking about whether organic farming brings positive effects to animals. We can see there are different views about the advantages of organic farming. Some may think it can provide more nutritious and healthier food. Others may say it can protect the natural environment and benefit wildlife. However, as far as I'm concerned, it's you, the ones who buy organic products, that will decide what they can bring to you, because market demand determines everything. Okay, that's all I want to say. Now, let's open it up for discussion.
Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking on the topic of sustainability.
This week's lecture on a scientific topic of current general interest is on sustainability. The term sustainability is not new. It was first coined in 1987 in a report for the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development. Since then, however, the term has been applied to everything from cars to agriculture and even economics. My specific focus, in fact, derives from this problem. I want to analyze what seems to me to be the confusion that surrounds sustainability. That UN document defines sustainable development as development that allows both the present and all future generations to meet their needs. Here is the first myth. Sustainability is not simply about the environment, which may come as a surprise to you. In fact, the original definition says nothing about it at all. Sustainability is not about protecting the world around us. The original focus was on finding ways to help poor nations catch up with richer nations, which primarily meant giving them similar rights to natural resources, water, food, energy, the things that many of us take for granted. The consequence and ultimate goal was improving living standards for all. Another myth is that sustainability is a synonym for green, as in green movement, green products, etc., although there is some overlap between the terms. Green suggests a preference for natural living, for example. When you go shopping, products marketed as green imply the absence of high technology and mass manufacturing processes. Those groups who campaign for sustainability, we can call them the lobby for sustainability, acknowledge that the situation is desperate. The main problem, they state correctly, is time. With 6 billion people on the planet now, and 1 billion more expected in the next 30 years, only technology will be able to provide everyone with an acceptable and safe lifestyle. Electric cars, wind turbines, and solar cells are key examples of this. They make great use of renewable resources while emitting fewer noxious chemicals. Nuclear power, too, is something the sustainability lobby has come to accept, unlike most greens. And here's the third myth. It concerns the role of technology. Technology is not rejected as evil, but we should not overemphasize the role of technology either. Take electric cars, for example. Researchers are currently working on plans to electrify the world's car fleet. New technology is currently being developed to make better batteries, giving longer performance. But a better way of thinking is perhaps to have battery stations for drivers to use on roads. When the battery is getting low, they simply swap the old one for a fully charged one. In other words, new business thinking, not new technology, for a sustainable future. There are similarities in agriculture, where knowledge can be more productive than new technology. Agriculture uses up about 3/4 of the world's water. Some crops are very thirsty and require a lot of water. So many farmers who believe in sustainability are now planting crops like sunflowers and wheat instead of corn, which are happy with much less water. In terms of water consumption, one of the biggest problems is that our diet is changing. As countries develop and people become richer, they aspire to a diet with more meat. Now, admittedly, most of the new births that will take our population to over 6 billion are going to be born in countries with largely vegetarian diets. However, most of them will be born in the city, and this is where water consumption is highest. That introduces the topic for next week's lecture, and we will be discussing.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture for teacher trainees on using drama activities in the classroom.
So now we're going to look at some of the reasons why it's beneficial to include drama activities, such as role play, in your teaching practice in a range of subject areas. There's a lot of evidence to show that drama helps a child's personal development. Firstly, creating the space for children to express themselves freely in a group situation helps to give them confidence in their own opinions and ideas. And, of course, drama activities can work especially well for shy or introverted children who usually don't participate in other types of classroom situations. Secondly, unscripted improvisation activities where children work from their imagination, if done in a supportive way, give children the opportunity to gain experience in taking risks and encourage them to say things that they might normally be afraid to say. Drama can also support the child's educational development. For example, the emphasis placed on cooperative activities in drama means that group members must learn the value of listening to one another. Being involved in any sort of performance which relies on everyone working together and playing their part also helps children to be responsible, not only for their learning, but for their general behavior. These are just a couple of ways in which drama can benefit a child's learning. Now I'd like to look at how role play can be such a valuable learning tool in the classroom. The value of role play for children who are having difficulties as a means of therapy is now widely accepted. The experience of doing a role play where children act out aspects of their own life without explicitly stating that it is a direct representation of their own experiences can help children to judge their own behavior in an objective way. One obvious example would be doing a role reversal with a bully role-playing a victim. Because this approach doesn't involve direct confrontation, it may help the bully to see his or her behavior in a different light. More generally, role play also allows the teacher to explore potentially controversial or taboo subjects in a safe setting in which children feel at ease. It's obviously essential for children to feel they won't be criticized or judged for voicing certain views. Getting children to examine their thoughts and opinions carefully can lead to a deeper self-knowledge and a stronger awareness of morality. This is an important factor in developing social skills. Let's look at a specific subject area now and think about how drama can enrich the learning process for the study of history. Bringing characters from the past to life in the classroom by doing classroom drama activities is an easy way to improve the level of the children's participation in the lesson. So, drama in the history classroom makes for a livelier atmosphere, but getting children to reenact scenes from history can also be extremely useful, as it helps them to remember what happened and why it was important, as well as helping to bring the past alive. Another way of doing this is to ask children to find solutions to historical problems using role play. This can help to focus attention on why certain decisions were taken. For example, children can be asked to decide how best to defend their town from attack or where to build a new settlement. Okay, what I'd like to do now is to think about your next teaching practice session and in groups discuss how you would incorporate an element of drama into your lesson plan.